Morning.
Morning, everybody. Marsha, David, you go to your brother. So this week's Torah portion, all Torah portions are important and Torah, but this week's Torah portion, if there's such a thing as a more centrally critical, fundamental Torah portion, it's this coming weeks, because that's when we speak about the giving of the Torah itself. It's the Sinai experience. This is on page 73. So, whoa. Is this working for everybody? I don't know. It's a little bit out of whack. I don't know. What? You good? Okay. Okay. So we're going to focus on one element of the narrative of the Jews coming to Sinai, and we're going to focus on a unity element, as appropriate as that is. That there's an underscoring of how Torah and faith in Torah and following Torah directives and how we apply Torah has a very strong unity element to it. So let's just start now in text 1 to take a look at something, and I'm going to share a screen. See if this is it. Yes. Okay. So on text 1, in text 1, you see something from this week's Torah portion. It says that the Jews journeyed from a place called the Refidim, and they arrived in the desert of Sinai, and they camped in the desert, and Israel camped there opposite the mountain. So there are few. This seems benign enough. There's one question you might say is, this seems a little bit verbose. You could say they arrived in the desert of Sinai and camped there opposite the mountain. So we got a couple of extra words, but what really drives that home is that in the Torah, we're all English speakers, so you think of how the mindset of a Hebrew speaker. In Hebrew, the Hebrew language, if I say running, you only hear me running. I could be talking about one person or two people. A verb, right? Leaving. One person is leaving, two people leaving. The way verbs are conjugated in Hebrew, the very term running is going to be different for singular and plural, for man, for woman. You'll know a lot about who's running, about the nature of who's running, just from the word running. But we don't have that in English. But you have that in Russian also. Yeah. Right. So here, the words of journeying, arriving, camping are all clearly plural. When it says the second camping, when it says Israel camped there, it's singular. It's like one person. When it was the entire Jewish people, which was, at that time, we don't know exactly, but it was probably close to 2 million, in the 2 million range. So why is that singular? That's a very obvious question. And therefore, Rashi, the primary commentary on the Torah, tells us that in text 2, in Israel camped there as one person with one heart. When it comes to camping opposite the mountain, they're looking at Mount Sinai, the source of the Torah. There, that brought them a unity to the extent that the Torah calls it. I'm just going to stop this for a second. I'll come back to the share. Just forgot to mute the wall. The Torah calls it like singular, phrases it in the singular. That is, they were as one person, even though obviously they weren't one, but there was one heart. But with all the other encampments, it's a bunch of Jews, a bunch of opinions. They were accompanied by complaints and arguments with each other. Okay, so the way the Torah is describing them as a plurality, because they were, and a plurality of people is going to have a bunch of different opinions. maybe even more of the Jews. I don't know exactly. That's just my impression. But here, when it comes to Torah, the camping opposite Mount Sinai, it says one. It's in singular.
Why do they refer to it as Israel?
Because at this point, they were all Israelites, and they're called Israel a bunch of times because they're the children of Israel. Israel is Jacob.
I understand.
Yeah.
But in this specific text, they refer to this group of people as Israel, as one Israel.
Yeah, because they had been until now, they've been called the Hebrews. And this is already, before this, the beginning of them becoming the Israelites.
But even though the people who were part of the group were not all of them Hebrews,
In Israel,
the Mount Sinai.
they were all Israel. Some of them had joined.
But they
Right.
hadn't become Jews yet. That was,
Well, that part we understand.
The
But
children
what
of Israel,
happened-
but the people who had come along with them had pledged to join them, whether they were sincere or not.
we put a deposit on
So they were ethnically not
Ethnically, not
Hebrews.
Egypt, but they had joined the people of Israel. Okay, so their Torah brings peace and unity. So therefore, they're camping there opposite the mountain. They're framed in the singular. Okay, so let's see if it's not working. Okay. Hello. Okay. Now, to understand that, the idea of that Torah and peace and unity are really inseparable. They bring here text 3 from Maimonides. Maimonides makes a statement which actually usually statements of theology and principle are ones he's quoting directly from the Talmud. He's actually not. This is a quote which doesn't have a direct source in the Talmud, but he's Maimonides, so he's a source on his own. And he says, peace is great. For the entire Torah was given to bring about peace within the world. As the verse states, its ways are pleasant and all its paths are peace. So Maimonides makes a very general statement. He's an observant guy. He's a believing guy. Torah is very complicated. Not complicated, complex, multifaceted. There's Shabbos candles, and there's tefillin, and there's mezuzah, and matzah, and there's so many things. And here he says the bottom line of it, the entire Torah, it's about peace, about bringing peace to the world, which is a beautiful idea. What does it mean? It can sound like just a nice plaudit. And especially if you think about Torah, if you drill down a little bit, if you want to study the Talmud, which is really going to be a central reservoir of being able to stand Torah thought, it's full of arguments. That's what it is. That's what makes it beautiful, actually. The argumentation. It's not nasty. It's not fighting, but clearly disagreements all over the place. Now, one could say that the Torah in and of itself, as it was given, is not given to arguments. Argumentation comes about because we each have our own egos and our own experiences, and therefore our own perspectives. So therefore, two people are going to read the same language, and they'll disagree. Because I'm coming from my direction, you're coming from your direction. You like to disagree no matter what. So there's so people are going to disagree. Legitimately, we'll see things differently. So the idea of Torah, you say if we're sitting around, you say, well, Maimonides says Torah is all about peace. There's all the arguments. There's Sephardi, Ashkenazi, the Hasidim, we're all over the ballpark. So that's just because we're humans and we have egos, and therefore different perspectives. But actually, in text 4, the Medrash tells us that the words of Torah were not stated definitively. Now, definitively is, I'm not sure it's the greatest translation, because the idea of what it's saying is, in a way, which is absolutely unambiguous. Torah is not written that way. Torah absolutely it leaves room for interpretation. And the Medrash is telling us, the rabbis in the Medrash say, for every law that God taught Moses, he presented 49 paths in which the ruling is, if in the case of pure or impure, it is pure, and 49 paths in which the ruling it is impure. God gave a Torah open to interpretation from different ways. Other quote in the Talmud is 70 different ways of interpretation. In other words, it was by design. It was given in a way that allows for different ways of interpretation from different people from different perspectives. It's not just because of our egos, not just because of our upbringing. And Moses said to God, Master of the universe, how will we ever render a definitive ruling? We're not supposed to be a split people. The Torah also says later on that we should not. It's not a good thing to have Jews in Tunisia practicing differently than Jews in New York or in Bulgaria. It's not a great thing. And the Torah says, they didn't bring it here, it says, don't make yourself into different pockets. So then he says, how are we going to have, with a bunch of different perspectives, how are we going to have a definitive ruling that this is what Jews do? Not Ashkenazi Jews, not Hasidic Jews, not Jews. So God said to him, follow the majority. If the majority rules that it is impure, rule that it is impure. If the majority rules that it is pure, rule that it is pure.
And pure.
Now, 1 second. Pure and impure, it happens because that's the case. I was talking about a case of purity and impurity. Now, it doesn't mean majority if there are more Sephardic Jews in the world than Ashkenazic, then we all eat rice on Pesach. It means when there was a great court. We haven't had a great court for 2,000 years. But one of the very important things, one of the things that kept Judaism together and prevented the okay. One of the things that prevented splintering in the Jewish people was that there was a great court who spoke to all Jews. And if the great court had said their rice is okay on Pesach, everybody would be eating right on Pesach. And if they had said about rice is not okay on Pesach, there wouldn't be a Sephardic tradition. These things developed after the great court was no longer allowed to function when the Romans interfered with it. And ultimately was disbanded. So frame it that way, he told Moses, you're gonna have, because the Torah itself tells us we should have a great court. And the Torah itself says that when that great court sits and decides whether this question of whether we should be able to eat rice on Pesach, it goes by majority rule. Now, majority rule is not peace necessarily. Majority rule means someone wins and someone loses. You're outnumbered. And you can have, I'm not even talking about the tyranny of the majority, but it's you can have a bunch of disgruntled people who lost and don't agree. And because these are the laws, they have to follow the track. They have to go along with it. That's not necessarily it's in our normal human experience, the idea of peace is not really synonymous with a Supreme Court where the 5-4 decisions and say that this is, look, now we have a decision. It wasn't necessarily a peaceful decision. People disagree. On the court, outside of the court. So now let's take a look at how the Torah sees situations like that. And this is really a core part of this, of how we see law and decisions of the law. We'll start off with this. In this week's Torah portion, when it introduces the Jews coming to the Sinai desert, the launch of it, every year on Shavuot, when we celebrate the giving of the Torah, this is the first the first verse we read, because this is within the Torah portion, which is larger than just the incident, the episode of receiving the Torah. This is the launch. In the third month of the children of Israel's departure from Egypt, on this day, they arrived in the desert of Sinai. Now, that seems also a benign enough verse. The Talmud finds it a little odd that just in the structure of the verse, what's the most important thing here? The most important thing is that Israel arrived at Sinai. So you'd think it would say, and Israel arrived at Sinai in the third month after their departure from Egypt. It starts in the third month. Do we really care whether it was the fourth month, the second month, the third month? What we care about is that the Jews arrived at Sinai. Why does there seem to be this underscoring of the third month? So the Talmud tells us, blessed is the merciful one, God, who gave because 3 was underscored. It's a threefold Torah. We call it Tanakh. There's the Torah, the prophets, and the writings. So the scripture as we have it is threefold. To a threefold nation, which is the Kohen, the Levi, the Israelites, by means of a third born, Moses was born on the third day, because God had told the Jewish people, men and women, to separate from physical intimacy in preparation for receiving the Torah. And this was the third day of their separation in the third month. So in other words, it's a bunch of threes. It's a number. If we're playing numbers games, it's a bunch of threes. But now, what's so important about 3? What does 3 tell us? And so like this. Torah, when it comes to 3, if you think about it this way, actually, before we do this, no, go the other way. Okay. 1 symbolizes what? It's alone. I'm living alone. I don't have to share the remote with anyone. I'm alone. I make all the decisions myself. Now I'm living with someone. I'm married. Now there's someone else. Now I have to share the remote. Now I have to. We can. We have to discuss where we want to go to dinner. It's not my decision anymore. 2 means that there's plurality, and plurality means that there is room for disagreement. 3 is symbolizes something, a value beyond the 1 and the 2 that brings the 1 and 2 together. When I stand under a chuppah with a couple, I want to talk to them about how there are 2 people, independent thinking, independent people, different personalities and drives and fears and hopes. And the chuppah represents their commitment to their relationship, which really transcends them both. And that, in that sense, they are, as the Torah describes them, it's 2, they blend and become 1. How do 2 people become 1? The math doesn't work. It's a half and a half become 1. Where we put aside part of our ego and we're leaving space for someone else's desires and needs. So that, and we care about them. It's not just they win. It's what I want to do in living a good life in marriage is not to win sometimes and lose sometimes in discussions with my wife. It's because I want her winning is me winning also, because now that's what we want to do today. Because this is something where I'm giving space for her and she gives space to me differently in the way we do it. So the number 3 symbolizes a unifying force of the one and two because they're in touch with something higher than them. You can make it in a much more pedestrian way. You can say, that one, you have, I'm in the kitchen, I have a single spice. So that's all I can use. Because whatever it may be, salt. There's a second one. It's pepper. Do I use this? Do I use that? Or maybe I have the wisdom to be able to use them together and really come up with something which is better than just salt alone or just pepper alone. But I understand the blend. Maybe one's salt and one's something sweet. It's the examples are endless, but the idea is that 3 is a step up from either being solitary, because solitary is I'm only me. I'm capped by who I am. Someone else, there's advantage, there's disadvantage, because what do we disagree? 3 is the ability to really morph into something new, a couple. Which is a new reality. So here, when it comes to Torah, there's 13 what we call the hermeneutic. I don't even know what the word means. Hermeneutic principles to be able to arrive Jewish law from verses. This is a Talmudic idea, and it's from the Mishnah. And the Torah, it says that the Torah is expanded by 13 rules, and number 13 is that when 2 verses contradict each other, the meaning can be determined by a third verse that reconciles them. Not that determines that one is right and the other is wrong, but brings them together so you have more of an understanding. And they bring an example from this week's Torah portion. One verse says, God descended upon Mount Sinai to the peak of the mountain. So the Jews are standing before the mountain, and God, the visual, pretty clear, although we can't imagine God. There's a mountain, and God is like in a cloud at the top of the mountain talking to us. That's the way you'd envision it. I assume that, that's the way it ends up in Cecil B. DeMille, definitely in the little kids' pictures. But later on, in the very same Torah portion, it's this week's Torah portion, God said to Moses, so shall you say to the children of Israel, you have seen that from the heavens I've spoken with you. So God spoke to us from the heavens. The heavens is not the top of the mountain. It's the same Torah portion. They're a couple of chapters apart. It seems like a contradiction. 2 verses, irreconcilable. So we find later on that Moses, as he's repeating this to the Jews and recounting what happened before he passes away, he throws in a verse which helps us reconcile. He says, from the heavens he let you hear his voice to instruct you, and upon the earth he showed you his great fire. Moses is saying, I said a cloud of fire, whatever it was, but Moses is saying that you saw something in your earthly reality, the fire, the clouds, whatever you saw at the top of the mountain, but from the heavens he let you hear his voice. You understood that it wasn't some gremlin at the top of a mountain with a megaphone, a magician speaking through fire. The transcendence, the divinity of it, the heavenliness of it was very clear. From the heavens he let you hear his voice, but he showed you in your human form with your eyes and your senses able to see the fire and the clouds. So the third verse reconciles. The first verse indicates godliness at the top of the mountain. Second verse indicates God in the heavens, and we say it was both. You were able to see at the top of the mountain, but what came out was so obviously a voice that was beyond the mountain, and a voice that was unmistakably of the divine. That's an example of this idea of 1, 2, and a third, which brings reconciliation, not only settling the debate, but reconciliation so that everything comes together. Now, we're up to text. Let's see, this is 10? I can't see it here. Yeah, that's
On what
That's-
side is the highlighted box?
oh, and so actually from here, 10b is that, as Rashi says on this verse, God's glory was in heaven, his fire and his power on the earth. But the idea is that we understood, for human beings on earth, we're able to perceive something, but we're also able to perceive that something we couldn't see is the transcendent presence that God was showing us. So when it comes to Torah, Torah is this idea of bringing together different opinions in a way, though, that it's clear that it's not that one side won, the other side lost. There's an agreement. So they didn't bring texts here to prove it, but I'll explain to you where we're going. A bed din, a Jewish court, could be 3, 5. I mean, it could be as large as you want, as long as it's an odd number. So let's say 5. You have, and it's Gennady and I are there as litigants. We're talking about $10,000. We did a deal, and I think I deserve the $10,000. You think you deserve the $10,000? $10,000 is a lot of money. I'm not going to give up on it so easily. And we go to this court, and we present our case in a Torah court. Then they go into deliberation between themselves. They come out. They say, "You get the $10,000." So part of me, I'm a human being. I say, "That's not good. I'm not happy," right? In the deliberation, it was actually 3 people thought it belongs to you, 2 people thought it belonged to me. When they come out with their verdict, it's a unanimous verdict. I don't even know that anyone sided with me. You know why? Because it's irrelevant. Because Torah goes by majority law, rule. And if I am truly someone who walked into a bet din, that's why people walking into a bet din have to be people who believe in Torah and the power of Jewish law and deciding Jewish law. If I'm really a believer, say, this is what Torah said. So listen, it's my 10,000. I'm obviously going to say I have my own self-interest in it. I need to surrender to that. It's not about sure it hurts to lose $10,000, but not if it was 3 and 2, or even if it was in a secular law. I'd say either he paid them off, or they made mistakes with today's judges. Who knows what it's going to be with today's judges? In Torah thought, there's a surrender that this is Torah law. That's why even those who oppose in the tribunal of 5, they can't come out and say it was a 3-2 decision. Once a decision they've been doing them, they vote, and the majority rules, even those 2 other rabbis, other judges, if they're really thinking properly, they have to reconsider and say, okay, so what am I missing? What did I not see there? Because even though they're just 3 judges, and he may not think that they're smarter than him, Torah law is something that's beyond us all. And if Torah law, in the language of Torah, God sits with a bet din. With a bet din. God sits with the court. And therefore, it's the only way this works is if we believe that God is speaking through the law. And in that sense, it's not about I said this, you said this anymore. Torah has now spoken. And as a believing Jew, $10,000 hurts. God said the 10,000 belongs to Gennady. I got to move on and find another 10,000.
So our faith is that 3 judges made the right decision, and 2 judges, even though have a different decision, they would have to come to the idea that 3 judges are correct.
It's in and of itself, we don't mandate, you don't police that. What they can't, it must be a unanimous decision, yes.
Well, but it wasn't. It was 3 to 2.
When they issue the decision, it's in the name of all 5.
So what happened if 2 out of 3 truly believe that they are right? Is there a hung jury?
No, because it's 5 people.
Yeah, but
So
but
they
it's not-
lost.
But it's not a unanimous decision.
It's issued as unanimous decision. In a bet din decision, you're not going to have his and this the minority decision.
Is that,
All 5 have to sign it.
is that the job of the 3 to convince the 2?
Try.
Or is it the job of 2 to put away their own opinion and go with the 3 majority?
I think a little bit of both. But and I can tell you in real life that sometimes there's definitely the minority opinions who walk away saying, I think that was a mistake themselves, or maybe to me quietly. But the thing is, that's actually not proper. Even though they think it, they can think whatever they want. Obviously, feelings are feelings. It's issued as a unanimous decision and should be accepted as a unanimous decision. And if it's a unanimous decision of a court, then while I disagree, I got to figure out, say, okay, so sometimes my mind doesn't, listen, what happens if something in Torah, I'm looking at a Torah topic, or someone asks me a Torah something, and I think my instinct is, I think it should go in a certain way. And I open up Code of Jewish law and it says otherwise. When I can argue, no, I have to figure out where did I mess up?
If the God's hand in everything, is the God's hand is in 3 people making one decision and 2 people making opposite decision?
What do you mean what does the God's hand in everything mean?
Everything that happens
In the world.
in the world, in the universe,
Yes.
has God's hand in it.
Yeah, including Sinwar.
I assume.
Okay, so.
But
He has his human decisions. God doesn't control him.
But Sinwar is outside of the Beit Din, outside of Sanhedrin.
Right.
Sanhedrin has a holy place.
Sanhedrin is different. I'm talking about a plain old bet din now. Sanhedrin for sure.
In Sanhedrin, 70 judges, right?
Yes, 71.
71 to be exact.
So, the idea that the sanctity of the bet din is that even though I know them, they're not geniuses, they're not Moses, they're not, they were my students, whatever. If they have that position, yes, we believe there's a certain guidance for them to be able to issue the right decision, which it's not an easy thing to have that type of faith, but that's the system is predicated on that.
But back to my question about God's hand in everything.
Yeah.
The God's hand in the any Beit Din decision where 3 went one way and 2 went the other way. And this is the lesson for the 2 to comply with the 3.
Yeah.
God teaches the 2 to comply with the 3.
I think that the 2, if they are being attuned not only to the nuances of this law, but to the system of how God gave us law and the system of how God gave us a way of adjudicating law, that yes, they're going to rethink, to go over and say, okay, this was my perspective, and let me try and see it again from the other perspective so I can understand more about what the law is over here. Okay, so here there's a case. In text 11, a famous case in the Talmud. Rabbi Gamliel was the leader of the Sanhedrin, and his student was Rabbi Yeshua. And Rabbi Yeshua, there was a case in the old days when we used to decide the calendar with witnesses coming who saw the moon. So, in other words, if today rabbis always knew that the either 29 or 30 days in, that's when the moon will come. So on one of those 2 days, if no witnesses came, they declared a new month. But if 2 witnesses came and said that they saw it, let's say the night of the 29th, they would declare that they Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh. So Rosh Hashanah is also Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the new year, but it's the beginning of the month. It's the first day of that month, the month of Tishrei. So in this period of time, this is 2nd century in Israel, in Yavne, witnesses came and they declared they saw the new moon, which means they set up Rosh Hashanah. Now, there was debate as to whether they could believe those witnesses. Maybe they weren't telling the truth. Rabbi Gamliel believed them. And then he heard that Rabbi Yeshua, also a vote, didn't believe them. And after the vote, after the adjudicated, he felt that these guys weren't. It means we have to wait an extra day. What's the extra day? It's not only another day to blow shofar. It means when's Yom Kippur going to be? Yom Kippur is the 10th of the month. If you don't know the 1st of the month, you don't know the 10th. You're supposed to. The Jewish community needs to know when Yom Kippur is. So Rabbi Gamliel sent a message to Rabbi Yeshua. I decree against you. No, not against you. I decree upon you that you must appear before me with your staff and with your money on the day in which Yom Kippur occurs according to your calculation. Rabbi Gamliel ran the system. He didn't want to rub anyone's nose in the dirt, but the system was sacrosanct. So you can't be going around telling people, this doesn't make any sense. We shouldn't have believed those people, those witnesses. The court believed them. Keep it to yourself. Your feelings are your feelings, but you can't split the Jewish people this way. So is it not only that Rabbi Yeshua was overruled? He said, I want you to come in public on the day that, according to you, would be Yom Kippur, in a way that's not Yom Kippur. You come with your staff and your money. It's a regular day to show publicly that you accept the ruling. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Yeshua took his staff and his money in his hand. He went to Yavne, in the northern part of Israel, where the rabbis were based at the time, to Rabbi Gamliel on the day which Yom Kippur according to his calculation. Rabbi Yeshua played by the rules. He shouldn't have let anyone know that he disagreed, but now that he did, that's what he did. He went on the day that would have been Yom Kippur according to his calculation, if his opinion had held, showing, I don't believe this is Yom Kippur. In other words, I agree with the majority. Upon seeing him, Rabbi Gamliel, who's the head honcho, stood up and kissed him on his head. He said in peace to him, come in peace, my teacher and my student. He was really a student, but he called him my teacher. You are my teacher in wisdom, and you are my student as you accepted my statement. The point was that this is an episode that the Talmud records, tell us something very important, not about a power play of the Chief Justice forcing a dissenting opinion to publicly, kiss the ring. God forbid, that's not what this is about. This is about Rabbi Gamliel keeping faith in the Torah system, because the Torah system, what Moses gave us, depends on a system which allows for the adjudications that people accept. Because Moses is gone. He's dead a long time. And we're not always going to have a Moses. We have to be able to have definitive judgments. Society needs that. Secularly, society needs that. We need to have definitive judgments where you say, that's just a judges are stupid, or whatever you say it is. That's not good. We need to be able to accept. And the idea is that within Torah, it's not just we're accepting. To me, I think I think it would be good for society if we all accepted courts that way. Where just those are laws, except you can vote in new representatives and all that stuff. You can change it your way, but not keep up the quarreling. In Torah, it's a very different thing, because Torah is saying this is the Torah. If I see the Torah as divine, if I see the Torah as the voice of Sinai, and I went to a court, and they went through the situation, the adjudication, and they by Torah law it came out a certain way. That's Torah. That's Moses talking, not three shmendriks. So I played with on the playground. They are the voice of Sinai right now, and that type of attitude gives us a certain sense, should give us a certain sense of oneness in accepting Torah. That Torah is not just a way we debate and we agree on it, we disagree on it. If it's about law, if it's about ideas is one thing, but if it's about law, even when we disagree, we're all in this together. It's unanimous verdict, and we accept it, like Rabbi Shulda. So to take this to a little bit of a different place, if you take a look, we said this is the third month. What's the first month? First month is the month when the Jews left Egypt. How did the Jews leave Egypt? The Jews, when they left Egypt, had been slaves for hundreds of years. They really knew very little about their own tradition. They saw incredible plagues and stuff. They're overwhelmed, and God pretty much yanked them out of Egypt. To begin with, they were very uniform. They were just, whatever you say, boss. They didn't know what was going on. And so in the languages, it came to pass at the end of 430 years, and it came to pass on that very day when the Jews left, all the legions of God went out of the land of Egypt. It's interesting, they used it uses a couple of times, the legions of God. It's like an army. They weren't an army, they were a bunch of slaves. But one of the things, the insights of that is that they like in the army, there's uniformity. The army, it's you follow rules. And here there was uniformity for a period of time. So month number one, the month when we left Egypt, conceptually it's this oneness, that we were all of one mind. Okay, before I go there, the second month is Iyar, and that's a month that God told the Jews that when they leave Egypt, they should count down. They count days, and we still do that today. We still count 49 days when the Jews left Egypt until we come to Sinai, until we get to Torah. He told them that originally. So the second month, the entire second month, was more than that also, but the entire second month was counting days. 1 day, 2 days, there's differentiation. So conceptually, month number one, there's absolute uniformity. Month number two, there's differentiation. We're counting, this is day number one, this is day number two, this is day number three, there's differentiation because that's the whole idea. What's month number three? So here's from the Rebbe, following Nisan and Iyar. Nisan is the first month, Iyar is the second month. The third month, when we got to Torah, as the Torah said, in the third month, they came to the Sinai desert, comes the month, we call it Sivan. The third month, the month of the giving of the Torah. Why is it? And we read before that the Talmud tells us that the Torah is emphasizing. It was the number three. It was a threefold Torah, the third born, the third day, third month. What's so important? We get that all from the fact that it starts off third month. What's so important with the third month? The third month shows us this idea of a unifying third factor. Torah unifies all Jews in a matter of one heart, namely, notwithstanding the different temperaments of different Jews, which can at times even lead to complaints and arguments, the Torah creates peace among these different temperaments to the point of being unified with one heart, a true peace. Because there's something that brings us together. And I remember when I was a student in London in 1987. So the Chabad, because of the opening up of the Soviet Union, beginnings of Perestroika, there, or maybe it was 88 already. I think it was 87. Because I was there 2 years, there was a delegation went from New York to Moscow to the Lenin Library, because we had found out, because things started opening up, that the entire Chabad library of previous eras was all intact in the Lenin Library. It had been there for 100 years, but they kept it all together. So 3 very powerful personalities, Rabbi Kuhn, one of them, went to Russia to be able to so one was an academic to analyze it. 3 different, but they were all powerful personalities, and they stopped off in London in our yeshiva. I guess because of the flight. And then they stopped off in London. They came to hang out with us in yeshiva a little bit. So they told us that they went to the Rebbe's door of his office to get a blessing for success before they went to the airport. And the Rebbe had, just within those days, a new Hasidic discourse of the Rebbe's had been printed, and the Rebbe gave them one to study. One. So what he did was, it was 3 8.5 by 11s. They folded over and stapled it on the back. He gave 1 page to one, another page to another, and a 3rd page to the 3rd. And the Rebbe said to them in Yiddish, I'm not being cheap on paper. I need you to understand that for this mission, you need to be one unit, and each of you needs the other. And it's idea. I don't know, I can't say what happened in their brains, but when someone who you respect and is guiding on a project that you deeply respect and value, it makes a difference. You put yourself to the side and make space so that we can have a unanimous way forward. It's not a tug of war, because tug of war works against the system. And that's the idea of being unified with one heart, I think, is part of that. And to the final one here on text 14. This is from Tanya, the founder of Chabad, what he writes. He says, he's writing this about the mitzvah of loving your fellow as you love yourself, which is not an easy thing. Says there is actually a direct and easy path toward fulfilling the mitzvah of love your fellow as yourself. Maybe it was easy for him, but he says there is a path with regard to every Jew, great or small. There are people we don't like. Someone doesn't like me. They were nasty to me. I think they stole $10,000 from me. Whatever. My feelings are my feelings. How am I going to legitimately love or even feel some sense of closeness with someone who I don't? Recognize when in reality we're all equal and we all have one Father. Therefore, all Jewish people are called siblings in the full sense of the word, for we all share a common root in the one God. Only our bodies are distinct from each other. So if someone tells me, if my sister called me now to say that a cousin of ours who we didn't even know about from Brazil, my father's from, came to New Jersey and now is in her house. If I can, to come over there today, I would want to go meet the person, and whoever I found there, I know this is my cousin. There's a certain feeling. I never met them. Can't say I love them. I don't know what they look like. But this is my cousin. And it will be within that framework that I go meet the person. So if I look at other people as, yes, having the layers of personality, and some things I don't like, think, well, what if this was my cousin? What if this is my brother? What if this is my sister? Do brothers and sisters always like everything about each other? No. Sometimes, yeah, but no, it doesn't. It's not. It's common that siblings don't see eye to eye, but deep inside, I want to know that even beneath the misbehavior and dysfunction that I think I see in my sibling, this is my brother and my sister. And if they were really in a place of need, I think I'm going to say there's something that, as much as how I see them, and that's true, and they have been terrible to me, or whatever they are, antisocial. In fact, this isn't my brother. In fact, this isn't my sister. In fact, this is my cousin. And when we look at ourselves as a people this way, we look at the entire world as friends, but Jews are family. And therefore, if I got notice now that from someone that they broke down on 78 and they need help, I hope if I could, I'd try to help anybody. But if they're a Jew, especially, it's like, how do I say no? How do I say no? Even if I don't have time, I got to find, maybe I'll send them a picture of my AAA card, but just go, because this is a sibling of mine in the larger sense. So let's just take this over here. Let's go to the key points. Number one, the Torah is billed as a Torah of peace whose ways are peace. When we have plenty of debate. The Jewish people were in a peaceful state of unity when receiving the Torah. Number three, there are two types of unity represented by the numbers 1 and 3. The former is singular, exclusivity that bars all other existence. The latter is a composite unity that transforms descent into a cohesive unit, like marriage. What marriage is supposed to be. It's bringing together people as a unit, and it's a step up from the singularity. Number 4, a halachic ruling issued by a majority is considered to be the unanimous decision, notwithstanding any dissenting opinions during the proceedings. Language is a little funny here. Okay, number 5, while looking past the body to our common soul is an effective way to love another Jew, a greater path is to look at the soul as it is in the body and realize unity even in that place. I'm going to stop the share here. So, is there any questions?
AAA will accept that picture?
I actually just sent someone. It actually just happened.
Really?
And I sent the picture. And I told, I don't know, it was some guy who was out here from Brooklyn, and they went in a hotel. And then someone from Williamsburg called me and said they flat tire. I wasn't here, but I sent them a picture because I've used AAA more times than I wish I had, and then they've never actually asked me to show the card. Right. I hope that wasn't illegal. Okay.
Well, they're a good picture.
A picture, not me, a picture of the card. All right. Be well, everyone. Have a great week.